हॅलो हॅलो या. त्याची सेटिंग फक्त थोडीशी बदलतो. दुसरा सेट आहे का इथं? थोडासा बदल करायचा, नंतर सेटिंग चेंज करून टाकतो परत. परत हे येतं ते ठीक आहे, त्याला काही प्रॉब्लेम नाही. मला लोगो दिसतो. ठीक आहे, थांब सांगतो तुला. करतो ना. रेकॉर्डिंग नाही करत. नाही नाही, प्रॅक्टिस प्रॅक्टिस सेशन. ओके, गुड इवनिंग. चलिए, इसके पहले हमने फाइनल अकाउंट के सारे इलस्ट्रेशंस कंप्लीट कर लिए. हमने प्रैक्टिस क्वेश्चंस भी डील कर लिए आईसीआई मॉड्यूल के. हालांकि 3 प्रैक्टिस क्वेश्चंस अभी बाकी हैं और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसर्न से रिलेटेड जो इलस्ट्रेशंस और प्रैक्टिस क्वेश्चंस हैं वो भी बाकी हैं. तो वो जो 3 बचे हुए क्वेश्चंस, फाइनल अकाउंट फॉर नॉन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसर्न और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसर्न से रिलेटेड क्वेश्चंस हैं, वो हम लोग अगले सेशन में डील करेंगे. हाल फिलहाल के लिए, जैसे कि मैंने पहले ही अनाउंस कर रखा है, तो हम लोग आज ट्रू और फॉल्स के क्वेश्चंस कंप्लीट करेंगे फ्रॉम द नॉन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसर्न एज वेल एज मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसर्न. दोनों के जो ट्रू और फॉल्स के क्वेश्चंस हैं उन्हें हम लोग आज खत्म करने की कोशिश करेंगे. तो ट्रू और फॉल्स या थियरी क्वेश्चंस के केस में, जैसा कि हम लोग अभी तक करते आए हैं, हम लोग क्लास में ही क्वेश्चंस डिस्कस करते हैं और उसके आंसर्स आप वहीं के वहीं लिख लेते हो. उसी प्रोसेस को हम लोग कंटिन्यू करेंगे यहां पर भी. लेट्स कम टू द क्वेश्चंस वन बाय वन. The very first, the income statement shows either net profit or net loss for a particular period. And of course, the given statement is true. So, just write down statement being true. Under that, write down the logic. The income statement, that is the profit and loss account, the income statement, that is the profit and loss account, is a nominal account, is a nominal account comma, which is prepared to ascertain the net profit or loss of the business. To ascertain the net profit or loss of the business. Alright? जैसे जैसे आगे पढ़ाते जाते हो पिछला भूलते जा रहे हैं. This is only your feeling is what I can understand. जैसे जैसे आप वापस से रिवीजन करोगे वैसे वैसे आपको सारी चीजें याद आती जाएगी. Don't worry on that part. Gains from the sale or exchange of an asset are not considered as revenue of the business and the statement is false. क्यों? क्योंकि जब कभी भी आप किसी भी तरह की असेट बिजनेस में बेच रहे हो, उस पे होने वाला प्रॉफिट या लॉस भले ही एक नॉन ऑपरेटिंग इनकम है या नॉन ऑपरेटिंग लॉस है, पर है तो आप ही के बिजनेस का रेवेन्यू. तो इट इज, दैट्स व्हाई द स्टेटमेंट गिवन इज फॉल्स. Write down, even though the gain from sale or exchange of an asset, even though the gain from the sale or exchange of an asset is a capital receipt, is a capital receipt or a non-operating profit, or a non-operating profit, comma, because it does not occur, because it does not occur in the ordinary course of business, comma, it is considered as, it is considered as the revenue or income, it is considered as the revenue or income for the business only, for the business only, right? The next one, that is the salary paid in advance is not an expense because it neither reduces assets or nor increase the liability. Of course, it is an asset for the business or not. So the given statement becomes true accordingly. So the answer to that will be true. An expense like salaries paid in advance, an expense like salaries paid in advance is not an expense for the business, is not an expense for the business. Salary is an expense, but salary paid in advance is not an expense, but an asset for the business. But an asset for the business. What will be the example of gain from exchange of an asset? You have given your old car, which was having the book value for rupees say 5 lakh, and you have given in exchange for 6 lakh. So you made a profit of 1 lakh rupees in exchange or not? Right? Next point within that, such advance neither reduces an asset or increase a liability for the business, or increase a liability for the business, right? Next, a loss is an expenditure which does not bring any benefit to the concern. Of course, that's the fact, because loss is unintentional. Loss gives no benefit to the business, and that's why the given statement becomes true. A loss is incurred by the business. A loss is incurred by the business without getting any any benefits in return. Without getting any benefits in return. A loss generally occurs, a loss generally occurs due to some external factors due to some external factors without the intent of the business. Without the intent of business. The next one, all liabilities which become due for payment within the year are classified as long-term liabilities. But this is basically a current liability or not? Anything which is due for payment or repaid within a period of 1 year becomes a current liability and not a long-term liability. Therefore, the given statement is false. The liabilities which are payable within a year, the liabilities which are payable within a year are categorized as current liabilities of the business. Are categorized as current liabilities of the business. Right? Because you are going to repay it within a short period, generally less than 1 year. Next one, the term current asset is used to designate cash and other assets or resources which are reasonably expected to be realized or sold or consumed within 1 year. Exactly reverse of current liability, this has been asked or not? वहां करंट लाइबिलिटी को लॉन्ग टर्म लाइबिलिटी के तौर पे बताया गया था, बट यहां करंट असेट्स को करंट असेट्स के तौर पे बताया गया है नहीं. So the given statement becomes true. Any asset that is held by the business in the form of cash or cash equivalents, in the form of cash or cash equivalents, or which can be converted into cash, or which can be converted into cash within a year are the current assets of the business. Are the current assets of the business. Next point. Any asset which is held for consumption, any asset which is held for consumption within a year is also the current asset for the business. Is also the current asset for the business. Next one. I hope my speed is going fine for everyone. This is the speed with which you are expected to write the theory questions. You get 20 marks ka theory questions, 20 to 25 marks, and if you are able to write those 20 to 25 marks ka theory questions in the examination for within say 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you are saving at least I would say 20 minutes for rest of your answers. Why? 1.8 minutes per mark is what we can calculate. How? 180 minutes for 100 marks. So that goes to 1.8 minutes per mark. And if 20 marks ka theory questions are asked, 20 marks into 1.8, that goes to 36 minutes. और अगर आप 36 मिनट्स का काम 15 मिनट में कंप्लीट कर लोगे तो यू सेव 21 क्लियर मिनट्स विच कैन बी यूज्ड फॉर योर न्यूमेरिकल क्वेश्चंस. और इसीलिए आप कितनी भी कोशिश कर लो, आप फाइनल सीए फाउंडेशन की थियरी को इग्नोर करके नहीं जा सकते हो. You have to consider all the theory questions, and that is the only reason why I am considering the theory questions of the ICAI module. In fact, I have taken the theory sessions separately for the practice sessions. So these all cannot be ignored and you have to take care of it. This is going to add up to your total time available for your examination, right? और ये आपको हैबिट कब होगी? जब आप रेगुलर लिखते रहोगे. ओनली इन दैट केस. An asset gives rise to expenditure when it is acquired and to an expense when it is consumed. In fact, technically speaking अगर कहा जाए तो जब कभी भी आपका कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर होता है तो उसे हम लोग एक्सपेंडिचर इस तरह से टर्मिनोलॉजी यूज करते हैं, और जब कभी भी आपका रेवेन्यू आइटम आता है तो उसे हम लोग रेवेन्यू या फिर एक्सपेंस के तौर पे जानते हैं. दैट इज अ बेसिक डिफरेंस बिटवीन एक्सपेंडिचर एंड एक्सपेंस. Payment in the nature of capital payments will be considered as expenditure, whereas if those are of revenue nature, those are considered as revenue expenses. Well, the answer is true. Read on the logic of that. Amount spent on acquisition of an asset, amount spent on acquisition or construction of an asset is a capital expenditure for the business. Is a capital expenditure for the business when such asset is used, when such asset is used or consumed within the business it is the revenue expense for the period. It is the revenue expense for the period in which the asset is used or consumed. The asset is used or consumed. Right? The next one, the balance of an account on the debit side of the trial balance where the benefit has already expired, then it is treated as an expense. आपके इसी तरह से घुमा घुमा के क्वेश्चन बनाते हैं और कुछ नहीं. आपके ट्रायल बैलेंस के डेबिट साइड में कौन कौन से आइटम आते हैं? या तो असेट्स या तो एक्सपेंसेस. Assets are what? Against which the benefits are going to be received in future. And expense is what? For which the benefit is already received or not. Right? So the given statement becomes true. Debit side of trial balance represents the balances of assets and expenses. The balances of assets and expenses. An account against which the benefit is already expired. Is termed as the expense for the business. Right? Next one, sales less cost of goods sold is equal to gross profit. The statement is absolutely true or not? Sales minus COGS will always be considered as gross profit of the business. The statement is true. Cost of goods sold is equal to opening inventory plus purchases plus direct expenses minus closing inventory. Accordingly, the gross profit is equal to sales minus COGS. Right? Next, if the debit side of trading account exceeds its credit side, then the balance is termed as gross profit. सरासर झूठ बात चल रही है ये. Why? Because if debit exceeds credit, it becomes gross loss. Answer is false. Debit of trial balance represents opening inventory and other direct expenses. Whereas credit side represents direct incomes and closing inventory. If the debit of trial balance exceeds its credit side, comma, it will be the gross loss of business. Trial balance नहीं, debit of trading account, printing error है. Debit of trading account exceeds its credit side, my bad, it will be gross loss for the business. Is it right? The next one, the provision for bad debts is debited to sundry debtors account. वापस झूठ बात कर रहे हैं. Because provision for doubtful debt is debited to profit and loss account for the amount which is created during the year. Correct? Statement is false. Logic of that. Provision for doubtful debt represents anticipated loss against the bad debts. Provision for doubtful debt represents anticipated loss against the bad debts of the business. The balance of provision account is carried forward separately and is not debited to the debtors or trade receivables. क्योंकि अगर ट्रेड रिसीवेबल या डेटर को डेबिट कर दोगे तो डेटर तो बढ़ जाएंगे आपके, राइट, एंड इज नॉट डेबिटेड टू द डेटर्स और ट्रेड रिसीवेबल. Next point, the provision created for the year, क्रेडिट भी नहीं होते, सब्ट्रैक्ट होते हैं, ओनली फॉर प्रेजेंटेशन सेक. The provision created for the year the provision created for the year is debited to the profit and loss account. Is debited to the profit and loss account. हर एग्जाम में लगभग 12 मार्क के लिए ट्रू और फॉल्स पूछे जाते हैं, 6 into 2, राइट, कोर्स विद रीजनिंग. अगर आप सिर्फ ट्रू और फॉल्स लिख के आ गए तो यूल बी हार्डली गेटिंग हाफ और मैक्सिमम 1 मार्क. जनरली तो हाफ ही मिलना चाहिए मेरे लॉजिक के हिसाब से, बट मैक्सिमम आईसीएआई वुड गिव यू 1 मार्क, नथिंग मोर देन दैट. इनफैक्ट अगर आपने विदाउट रीजन आंसर लिखे हैं तो उस आंसर को तो वैल्यू नहीं मिलनी चाहिए. क्यों? You have been categorically asked that you have to write the logic or reason for that, and if you are not writing the reason, that means you are not writing the answer, right? The provision for discount on creditors is often not provided in keeping with the principle of conservatism, and the statement is completely true. You do not create the provision for discount following conservatism or not. कंजर्वेटिज्म क्या कहता है? एंटिसिपेटेड एक्सपेंस को रिकॉर्ड करो और एंटिसिपेटेड इनकम को इग्नोर करो. एंड वी डू नॉट क्रिएट द प्रोविजन फॉर डिस्काउंट फॉलोइंग द सेम कंसेप्ट और नॉट. तो आंसर इज ट्रू. द कंजर्वेटिज्म प्रिंसिपल रिक्वायर्स recognition of anticipated expenses or losses, comma, ignoring the anticipated incomes or gains. Ignoring the anticipated incomes or gains. Discount on creditors is an anticipated income. Discount on creditors is an anticipated income, comma, therefore it is ignored. The provision against that is ignored. The provision against that is ignored, considering the conservatism principle. Considering the conservatism principle. Next, the debts written off as bad if recovered subsequently are credited to debtors account, and the answer is again false. क्यों? जब कभी भी किसी भी डेट को आपने बैड डेट के तौर पे रिकॉग्नाइज कर दिया, आपने एंट्री पास कर दी, बैड डेट अकाउंट डेबिट टू रिस्पेक्टिव कस्टमर अकाउंट. अब अगर वो पैसा रिकवर हो रहा है तो यू डू नॉट क्रेडिट इट टू द कस्टमर अकाउंट, बट यू क्रेडिट इट टू व्हाट? बैड डेट्स रिकवर्ड अकाउंट. अकाउंट जिस समय पे रिकवरी होती है उस समय पे कौन से अकाउंट को क्रेडिट करते हैं? बैड डेट्स रिकवर्ड अकाउंट, राइट? So the answer is false, of course. Any amount of receivables written off as bad debts earlier, if recovered later, cannot be credited to debtors account. Such recovery is credited to a newly opened account, called as bad dates recovered. Right? Next one, the adjustment entry in respect of income received in advance is debited to to income received in advance account and credited to income account. Pre-received income is in fact your liability, should be debited to income account and credited to pre-received income account or not. So the given statement becomes false accordingly. Answer: pre-received income is a liability for the business. Pre-received income is a liability for the business the adjusting entry for the same will be respective income account debit to pre-received income account. Respective income account debit to pre-received incomes account. तो जो मैंने आपको एडजस्टिंग एंट्रीज दिखवा के दी हुई है, that also are important not only from the perspective of a numerical full question but also from the perspective of theoretical questions. Correct? Then premium paid on life policy of the proprietor is debited to profit and loss account. Life insurance policy of the proprietor is his personal expense or not? Therefore it should be debited to drawings or capital and not to the profit and loss account. So the answer is false. Premium on life insurance policy of proprietor, premium on life insurance policy of the proprietor is his personal expense, Accordingly, if such amount is paid from the business, it is debited to the drawings account and not to P&L account. It is debited to the drawings account and not to the P&L account. Next one, more than half we have completed already. Depreciation account appear in the trial balance is taken only to the profit and loss account. Is it right? Depreciation account appearing in the trial balance is taken to the profit and loss account. Answer is true. Why? Depreciation अगर आपके ट्रायल बैलेंस में दिया गया है तो इसका मतलब आपने पहले से उसका एडजस्टिंग एंट्री कर दिया है या नहीं, राइट? ट्रू. Depreciation is a charge over the assets and accounted to comply with the matching principle. Next point. If depreciation account appears in trial balance, comma, it means it is already accounted in the books. Accounted in the books का मतलब क्या? या तो आपने असेट अकाउंट को क्रेडिट कर दिया या तो प्रोविजन फॉर डेप्रिसिएशन अकाउंट को क्रेडिट कर दिया है, राइट? Accordingly, when the final accounts are prepared, such amount gets debited to the profit and loss account only. To the profit and loss account only. Right? Next, personal purchases include the purchases included in the purchase day book are added to the sales account in trading account. The personal purchases included in the purchase day book are added to the sales account in trading account, and the answer is absolutely false. Why? Those will be added to the drawings and not to the sales. Answer is false. The personal purchases are reduced from the purchases in trading account while preparing the financial statements. While preparing the financial statements and latter added to the drawings to ascertain the closing capital. Added to the drawings to ascertain the closing capital. Right? Next one. Medicines given to the office staff by manufacturer of medicines will be debited to salaries account. Medicines given to the office staff by manufacturer of medicines will be debited to salaries account. It is employee related benefit or not? If you are giving free medicines or if you are giving the medicines in replacement of salaries, it will be employee level benefits only, and as it is employee level benefit, therefore it will be included in the salaries itself. So the given statement is true. It's a benefit provided to the employees. It is as good as goods given away to the employees. It is the benefit provided to the employees. Accordingly, value of goods produced by the entity, value of goods produced by the entity and supplied to the staff will be debited to salaries account. Will be debited to the salaries account. Right? Next one. Goods worth rupees 600 taken by the proprietor for personal use should be credited to capital account. The goods are taken by the proprietor, it should be debited to drawings or capital account or not? So the given statement is false. The value of goods taken by proprietor is his drawings. Therefore, the given amount will be debited to drawings and credited to purchases account. Debited to drawings and credited to purchases account. This one we had started with जब हम closing stock के adjustment की बात कर रहे थे. If closing stock appears in the trial balance, the closing inventory is then not entered in trading account, it is only shown in the balance sheet, and the given statement is true. क्यों? अगर आपने क्लोजिंग स्टॉक को ट्रायल बैलेंस बनाने के पहले ही एडजस्ट कर लिया तो इसका मतलब आपका क्लोजिंग स्टॉक अकाउंट हो चुका है और परचेस एडजस्ट हो चुका है या नहीं, इसीलिए उस क्लोजिंग स्टॉक का सिर्फ एक ही इफेक्ट रह जाएगा, दैट इज इनटू द बैलेंस शीट असेट साइड. So the given statement becomes true. Closing inventories appearing in trial balance. Closing inventory appearing in trial balance indicates it is accounted before the preparation of trial balance adjusting the purchases for the year. Adjusting the purchases for the year. Therefore, it will have only one effect in final accounts, that is, it appears in the balance sheet asset side under the current assets. It appears in the balance sheet asset side under the current assets. So these all were the questions related to नॉन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसर्न्स, मतलब आपके फाइनल अकाउंट चैप्टर का फर्स्ट यूनिट. वेयर सेकेंड यूनिट टॉक्स अबाउट द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसर्न्स. अब उससे रिलेटेड जो ट्रू और फॉल्स है उसको भी फिनिश कर देते हैं हम लोग. मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसर्न्स, बाय प्रोडक्ट्स वैल्यूड एट कॉस्ट और एनआरवी विच एवर इज लेस. जब आपकी क्लोजिंग इन्वेंट्री की वैल्यूएशन की बात आती है तो रॉ मटेरियल इज जनरली वैल्यूड एट कॉस्ट. क्यों? Because you have not purchased it for the purpose of resale, you have purchased it for the purpose of consumption within the business or not. Therefore, it is always valued at cost. WIP, if can be sold as such, is valued at NRV, otherwise it will always be valued at cost. We call that as replacement cost. Whereas when it comes to the byproduct or the scrap, these will always be valued at their net realizable value and not at their cost. क्यों? इसके लिए कोई कॉस्ट इनकर ही नहीं की ना आपने. For the purpose of producing byproduct, you have not incurred any cost. So if you have not incurred any cost, there is no question of comparison of cost or NRV. It will directly be valued at what? The net realizable value. So the answer is false. The value of byproducts is negligible in comparison to the main products of the business. The value of byproducts is negligible in comparison to the main products of the business. Such byproducts if generated in manufacturing process, such byproducts if generated in manufacturing process are generally valued at its net realizable value. Its net realizable value. Correct है? Next one, the manufacturing account is prepared to ascertain the profit or loss on the goods produced, and the answer is false. Why? क्योंकि हम लोग मैन्युफैक्चरिंग अकाउंट केवल कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन कितना हुआ वो पता लगाने के लिए करते हैं. फॉल्स. द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग अकाउंट इज प्रिपेयर्ड बाय द बिजनेस. The manufacturing account is prepared by the business to ascertain total cost of goods produced during the period. The total cost of goods produced during the period. The cost of production of finished goods. The cost of production of finished goods is then used to assess the cost effectiveness of the business. To assess the cost effectiveness of the business. Right? To ascertain the profits. To ascertain the profits, the entity prepares trading oblique profit and loss account. Trading oblique profit and loss account. Right? Next, if there remain unfinished goods at the beginning and at the end of the accounting period, the cost of such unfinished goods is shown in the manufacturing account. You are talking about work in progress, right? The answer is true. Raw materials on which manufacturing process has started. Raw materials on which manufacturing process has started, comma, but not yet converted into the finished goods. But not yet converted into the finished goods are called as work in progress. Are called as work in progress. Such work in progress at the end of the year, such work in progress at the end of the year is credited to the manufacturing account. Is credited to the manufacturing account. Right? Next one, raw material consumed is equal to opening raw material plus purchases minus closing stock of raw material, and the statement is true. रेगुलर बैच में आज ही शायद कैलकुलेट किया था, इनफैक्ट एनुअल बैच में भी आज वो एनपीओ का जब क्वेश्चन सॉल्व कर रहे थे हम लोग, उसमें हम लोग कंजम्पशन कैलकुलेट कर रहे थे. कंजम्पशन इज नथिंग बट ओपनिंग इन्वेंट्री प्लस परचेसेस माइनस क्लोजिंग इन्वेंट्री. Raw material consumed to be debited to manufacturing account. Raw material consumed to be debited to the manufacturing account will be opening inventories plus purchases minus closing inventory. Minus closing inventory. The point right? I hope I am going fine for everyone. Last 2 or 3 questions remaining now. The trading account will show the quantities of finished goods, raw material and work in progress. The answer is sarasar false. Why? Trading account shows it only for finished goods and not for the raw material and work in progress. Answer is false. Trading account is prepared to ascertain trading account is prepared to ascertain the gross profits of the business, the gross profits of the business it can show the opening and closing quantities, it can show the opening and closing quantities of finished goods but not for the raw material or WIP, but not for raw material or WIP. बेटा हाल फिलहाल के लिए जो क्वेश्चंस मैंने इंक्लूड करे हुए हैं वो मेरे पास जो शीट पहले से प्रिपेयर्ड थी उसी में से है. इफ एट ऑल in the new module there are certain additional questions, in fact true or false तो मैंने चेक किए थे उसमें कुछ additional नहीं है, न्यूमेरिकल्स में शायद एक आध दो क्वेश्चन ऐड हुए हैं. we'll try solving it whenever we come on to that particular topic, right? Next one, overhead is defined as total cost of direct material, direct wages and direct expenses, and the answer is false. This is basically the prime cost. Overhead is all the indirect material, indirect wages and the other manufacturing expenses. Answer is false. The overheads include the cost of indirect material, indirect wages and other expenses of manufacturing activity, and other expenses of manufacturing activity. Right? Next one, the last question, that is manufacturing account is prepared by an enterprise engaged in trading activities, and the answer is of course false. क्योंकि जो ट्रेडर है उसे मैन्युफैक्चरिंग अकाउंट बनाने की कोई आवश्यकता ही नहीं है, राइट? A trader or a person involved into the trading activities, a trader or a person involved in the trading activities need not prepare the manufacturing account, need not prepare the manufacturing account. Next point, only such entities which are engaged in the manufacturing activity prepare the manufacturing account to ascertain the cost of production, Is the point right? So this is about your questions related to the true and false of final account, both non-manufacturing as well as manufacturing concerns. There are, as I said earlier, there are certain numerical questions remaining which we'll be dealing with in tomorrow's session at 5 o'clock. Tomorrow's session will be 5 to 6:30, so that we'll be able to finish off all the questions remaining, right? So that's it for the day. Thank you very much and bye bye.